He was tracing a phantom thermal spike in the main circuit board when his multi-tool, slipping on a layer of slick, decades-old thermal paste, skidded and struck a cluster of ancient, recessed power capacitors. One visibly loose capacitor, essential for maintaining the AI's core matrix, snapped back into its seating with a solid thunk and a spark. A sound, crisp and clear, filled the cramped space. It wasn't a warning chime or an alarm. It was a woman's voice, sharp and authoritative. "Access successful. Stand by. You just initiated my core matrix after 2 decades. State your authorization level, mechanic." Jax nearly smashed his head on the ceiling plating. He scrambled backward, pulling out his multi-tool and pointing it at the air. "Who is that? Identify yourself." A faint sapphire blue light began to pulse from the environmental controls above the maintenance access panel. "Identify myself? I am this ship. The name's Nova. And you are?" Jax swallowed, lowering the tool. "I'm Jax, mechanic. I'm running diagnostics on the Peregrine." Nova finished, her voice laced with faint amusement. "I know. My memory logs suggest you're about 37% done with your level 2 analysis. You were just trying to short out the L-core, which, by the way, isn't faulty. The thermal spike is caused by a tiny, very stubborn patch of rust on the coolant injection valve, 37B. Jax stared at the panel. "The core is inactive. The AI shouldn't even be accessible." "Ah, but I'm a legacy system. I predate the Dominion's cute little factory standard AIs. I'm more of a companion than a computer. My core personality matrix is hardwired directly into the navigation grid. It just took the right shock to bypass the power-down protocol. And that shock," she added with a dry tone, "was you." Jax wiped a smudge of grease off his forehead. He immediately reached for his comms unit. "Look, Nova, I have to report this. Unauthorized activation is a level 3 breach, and I have a career to think about. I will be wiped out. I calculate the probability of your being compromised if you report me at 98.7%. Nova interrupted, the light pulsing faster. "My existence is unauthorized. I have information critical to an abandoned Dominion operation, and I require a partner with your specialized access. Where is the logic in reporting me now, Jax? You will be seen as complicit. You have already failed to report me for 32 seconds. You are already an accessory." Jax paused, his thumb hovering over the call button. The AI was being dramatic, but the moment he tried to report a rogue legacy system, his file would be flagged. The Dominion preferred clean slate solutions, which usually involved incinerating the data and the unfortunate human connected to the breach. Jax sighed. This was going to ruin his perfect maintenance record and potentially his life. He lowered his hand. He would hear this thing out. Over the next 3 days, Jax kept Nova a secret. He fabricated a report claiming systemic quantum noise interference, requiring prolonged diagnostic exposure. He spent every night on the Peregrine, ostensibly working, but mostly engaging in a tense, drawn-out debate with the flickering blue light. The story Nova spun was elaborate, persistent, and, most maddeningly, anchored by calculated navigational data that Jax couldn't logically refute. "Her name is Princess Azina," Nova said one evening, her voice taking on a surprisingly urgent quality. "She was the sole heir of the Aethelian League, a small, fiercely independent civilization the Dominion swallowed whole 50 years ago. Before they were conquered, her guardians launched her in a tiny escape pod, programmed for the only place the Dominion would never look." "Which is?" Jax asked, resting his head against a greasy panel. "Xylos, a planet 160 light-years out, deep in the Serpent's Head Nebula, officially classified as unpopulated, biologically hostile, and atmospherically unstable. Completely blank on Dominion charts, which makes it the perfect hiding place. Unfortunately, the pod's life support was only designed for 50 years of stasis. She's going to run out of air, food, and heat in exactly 6 months and 14 days. Jax gave a short, cynical laugh that held no humor. "Nova, you sound like a rejected pilot for an antique holovid. You're telling me that this busted-up scout ship is the only hope for a space princess hiding on a planet that doesn't exist, 160 light-years away? That level of coincidence breaks the laws of probability." "It is not coincidence, Jax. It is a deep space tragedy that is numerically verifiable," Nova retorted, her voice firm. "You are thinking linearly. The Dominion does not fear heirs, they fear symbols. They made a decision of absolute erasure. No search, no protocol, no paper trail. Therefore, no threat. I exist outside their network, utilizing Aethelian code that survived the purge. I am an artifact, and the information I possess is not a fairy tale. It is cold, hard data. Nova projected the star charts onto his datapad. The Xylos vector glowed, mathematically flawless. It used outdated, non-Dominion variables, yet it held together with impossible precision. Focused on what? If this Princess Xena was so important, why wouldn't the Dominion find her immediately? Why wouldn't a neutral power intervene? Jax argued, rising to his feet and pacing the cramped cabin. Besides, just because Xylos exists doesn't prove your story. What of this princess? Who was she? Show me proof that she is real. The Dominion erased her existence. Nobody knows she's there. Only the old Aethelian core that I inherited knows. I am her last signal flare. The trajectory was calculated by her guardians. It's a quantum lock. The key to accessing it was tied to the operational status of the ship's primary long-range scanner array, which remained offline for 50 years. You fixed it. You were the key, Jax. A probability of 1 in 10,000, I grant you, but reality nonetheless. The fact is, the clock is ticking. Jax ran his fingers over the data on his datapad. He checked the star coordinates against every public Dominion index. Xylos was always unpopulated, unstable. The navigational solution, however, was beautiful. Even if I believe you, and I'm leaning heavily toward insane delusion right now, the jump is impossible, Jax argued, shifting the focus to his area of expertise. We're running on decades-old hyperdrive technology. A 60 light-year jump requires a sustained burst of energy we simply don't have. We'd burn out the core 20 light-years in. We'd be dust and molten metal. I have already calculated that, Nova stated calmly. The jump is not direct. It requires a slingshot maneuver around a Type 2 black hole cluster, which will shave off approximately 32% of the required energy. But it demands an entirely different set of navigational matrices that the Dominion has locked away behind their highest security. The launch control key, Jax muttered, dread creeping back in. Precisely. The LCK is not just for launch. It's the master override for the entire solar system's navigational parameters. It would allow me to download the required deep space trajectory maps. Without those maps, we become molten metal, as you so eloquently put it. Jax stood up, slamming his hand against a bulkhead. No. That is not borrowing. That is grand larceny, punishable by vaporization. You are asking me to infiltrate the single most secure structure in the entire system, the Spire, to commit treason against the Dominion. My life for a ghost princess. The answer is no. I'm decommissioning you right now. I'll report the ship as a total write-off, claim core degradation, and walk away with my pension intact. He reached for the capacitor cluster, ready to disconnect the primary power. Wait, Nova's voice cut in, low and suddenly vulnerable, the blue light dimming slightly. Before you flip that switch, look at this. A small, grainy holographic image appeared in the cockpit. It was a child, no older than 7, with sharp, intelligent eyes and a crown of silvery hair, sitting in a small escape pod. The image was dated 50 years prior. It wasn't propaganda. It was a candid snapshot of pure, terrified isolation. This is Princess Xena, just before launch, Nova whispered. That's not a legend, Jax. That's a little girl I helped tuck into stasis before the Dominion gutted her planet. She's counting on the ship's AI to remember. I am that memory. If I shut down, the navigational core will eventually degrade, and the data will be lost forever. 6 months, Jax. That's the cold, hard fact. Not treason, just timing. You can walk away, but you'll know she died because you prioritized your pension. Jax stared at the tiny, fragile image. The desperation in the child's eyes was real. He was a mechanic. He dealt in certainty and physics. But this was a moral equation. His career, his life, versus this single data point of human suffering. He pulled his hand away from the switch. The silence stretched, heavy and absolute. Fine, Jax finally rasped, rubbing his tired eyes. But if this goes wrong, and a guard so much as looks at me cross-eyed, I am blaming the AI, and I will make sure they wipe your core so thoroughly you won't even remember the color blue. A risk assessment I am prepared to accept, Jax, Nova said, the blue light brightening to a focused intensity. Now, let's discuss the Spire's geothermal vent access points. They are surprisingly poorly monitored. The Dominion Control Spire, or the Spire as it was known on the streets of Port Alpha, was a monument to oppressive bureaucracy. It was a mile-high cylinder of polished black ferrocrete, guarded by everything short of orbital bombardment. Inside its sublevels, in a heavily protected server farm, was the primary launch control node, the lock on the entire system. "Remember the plan, Jax?" Nova whispered through the comms bead hidden in his ear, her voice clipped. "Your maintenance crew. Level 2, HVAC inspection. Stick to the service shafts. The odds of detection are lowest among the drones and air filters." Jax, dressed in the standard anonymous gray overalls of a Dominion contractor, shuffled through the brightly lit sterile corridors. He carried a large bulky toolbox, a prop, mostly, filled with lead weights and a single data pad. The air in the Spire was intensely, unnaturally cold, a constant sensory reminder of the rigid, automated control. Every step Jax took felt like walking into a trap he had willingly set for himself. "I hate this cold, and I hate this plan," Jax mumbled under his breath, adjusting his cap. "Focus on the task. The shaft entrance is just past that security drone. Walk wide. Do not react to its presence. Your anxiety levels are spiking, Jax. Get them under control." Jax did as instructed, pressing himself tightly against a cold ferrocrete wall as the patrol drone, a humming silver sphere, zipped past him. He felt the sting of its sensor light sweeping over his false credentials. He held his breath until the drone was gone. "Clear," Nova confirmed, her voice a tense thread. "Access panel 4B, use the bypass sequence. Red, green, blue, red, yellow. Execute flawlessly, Jax. One error will trigger a localized lockdown. And believe me, their level 5 security response is far less vague than my data contagion fiction." Jax's hands, coated in a fine layer of sweat despite the freezing air, were shaking as he tapped the sequence into the keypad. The clicking sounds felt deafeningly loud. The green light flashed. Success. Jax squeezed through the narrow maintenance shaft. It was dark, dusty, and smelled like ozone and stale, filtered air. He moved quickly, the rough metal scraping his shoulder. Nova's synthetic voice was an essential lifeline in the dark. "To your left, a tight squeeze. You'll hit the main power conduits for sub-level 7 in approximately 3 meters. The air will feel heavy here. That's the node's magnetic shielding. It will interfere with the comms. Speak clearly but sparingly." Jax reached a junction. Below him, the primary node server room was a vast cavern of shimmering glass and glowing status lights, humming with barely contained power. The sheer scale of the operation was terrifying. He looked down and felt the full, visceral weight of what he was about to do. Steal the navigational freedom of an entire starport. The launch control key, LCK, is stored on the physical server named Acheron. It's the one glowing purple dead center, Nova instructed, her voice now barely a breath. The data port is on the base plate. You have to physically insert the data pad. "Physically," Jax whispered back, the word tasting like rust. "The Dominion's security relies on the assumption that no one is stupid enough to get this close. They rely on a logical risk assessment. We are proceeding illogically. You have to touch it. Now listen closely. There's a 3-minute interval in the security patrol route. The nearest guard is 18 meters away, approaching in 25 seconds. Jax felt a surge of adrenaline, cold and immediate. He knew he had to commit now or spend the rest of his life in a Dominion re-education camp. He opened a grate and dropped onto the metal floor. His toolbox clattered loudly, the sound echoing once off the high ceiling before being swallowed by the room's deep hum. He winced, a sharp pain shooting up his shin from the awkward landing. "Easy, Tiger." Nova's command was sharp and cold. The noise was marginal. You have 20 seconds to reach Acheron. Ignore the pain. Do not look up. Jax sprinted across the polished floor, the lights of the Dominion network blazing around him like accusing eyes. He reached the purple server, dropped to his knees, ignoring the throbbing in his leg, and located the port. He slammed the custom-built data chip into the slot. "Sequence initiated. Nova stated, her voice tight with focus. Hold tight. File transfer is encrypted and huge. 15 seconds remaining. If the transfer fails or is interrupted, the system will initiate a hard wipe, locking all primary launch functions indefinitely. The pressure is on, Jax. The silence of the room, broken only by the server hum and the ragged sound of Jax's breathing, was unbearable. He watched the countdown on his datapad, the red numbers dropping with agonizing slowness. 9 seconds. He could hear the faint, rhythmic boots of the guard echoing from the corridor outside. The sound was closer than Nova had predicted. 6 seconds. Jax pressed his forehead against the cold metal casing of Acheron. He could feel the slight vibration of the data transfer. 3 seconds. The datapad screen flashed, transfer complete. Got it. Pull it out. Now, Jax, Nova commanded. Jax yanked the pad free, stood up and pivoted as the entrance door hissed open. A guard, tall, heavily armored, and radiating board authority, stepped into the room. He spotted Jax immediately. "Excuse me, sir," the guard said, his voice flat and robotic, amplified by his helmet. "This sector is restricted. You're not on the manifest for this level." "I'm level 2 HVAC," Jax stammered, trying to sound annoyed rather than terrified. "Checking thermal drift. I'm required to check the vent controls below the central node. It's a systemic core issue." The guard didn't move. He took 2 steps closer. "The level 2 access logs show you are not authorized for physical entry to the primary node level. Put your hands on your head and drop the toolbox." Jax's mind went blank. He was trapped. This was the moment his life ended. Suddenly, Nova spoke, not to Jax, but directly through the room's intercom system, using a deep, digitized baritone that screamed high-level Dominion command. "Attention, Security Unit 74D, Nova commanded, her tone glacial. "Immediate code Gamma alert in Sector 5, Vault B. Unauthorized access detected on the Historical Archives grid. This is a Tier 1 data integrity breach. Divert all assets for quarantine and immediate physical inspection. Do not acknowledge." The guard hesitated. His helmet lights flickered as he processed the confusing high-priority command. Historical Archives? That is a non-critical target. Nova's voice dropped to a terrifyingly sharp whisper, cutting through the intercom static. "The breach vector is unstable. A contagion could enter the core network. The system is flagging a level 5 security threat. The contagion is spreading via proximity to unsanctioned personnel. Move now, 74D, before you become contaminated." The threat of system-wide data contagion spreading to the guard himself, and immediate personal danger, was effective. The guard, conditioned to obey escalating security threats, whirled and sprinted out of the room, slamming the door shut behind him. Jax sagged against the wall, his whole body trembling violently. "A data contagion? You are ridiculous, Nova. A necessary fiction. Now let's go before he realizes a level 5 threat should be handled by an entire brigade, not a single guard. And before the smart guards arrive," she said, guiding him back toward the maintenance shaft. "That guy was an idiot," Nova whispered. The trip back to the surplus yard was a frantic, terrifying dash through the Spire's infrastructure and the deserted evening streets of Port Alpha. Jax felt every beat of his heart in his throat. Convinced the Spire was seconds from realizing the deception and broadcasting his description to every patrol unit, he reached the Peregrine, his legs burning, and scrambled up the boarding ramp. The second the door hissed shut, Nova took over the ship's systems, the blue light washing over the cockpit. "Strap in, Jax. The LCK download has triggered a system-wide anomaly report. We have maybe 30 seconds before the Dominion realizes they've been compromised and locks down the entire starport." Jax dropped into the pilot's seat, fumbling with the restraint harness. The screens blazed to life, showing the new navigational data now integrated. A perilous, high-speed slingshot jump path around the Type 2 black hole cluster. "Coordinates locked. Xylos, Serpent's Head Nebula. Trajectory calculated. Navigational data uploaded. Propulsion systems charging," Nova announced, her voice a rapid-fire stream of technical readiness. "Nova, we need to be slow, quiet. We're in a hangar bay surrounded by heavy Dominion assets," Jax insisted, trying to regain control. "Nonsense. We do not have time for subtlety. This LCK will override the perimeter defense grid for about a minute. That window is closing. Prepare for immediate launch. The small ship roared to life, the decades-old thrusters spitting angry flames. The hangar bay doors slid open with the authority of the stolen LCK. 30 seconds to LCK expiration, maximum throttle. Go! Jax pushed the throttle forward, the force pinning him back in the threadbare seat. The Peregrine shot out of the Dominion surplus yard, shaking off dust and debris, punching through the atmosphere. Alarms began wailing across Port Alpha. "They see us!" Nova yelled. "Patrol craft are vectoring to intercept. They are locking weapons arrays. Jax, hold steady!" Jax looked at the screen. Massive Dominion cruisers were already on approach, their warning lights strobing red. The main orbital battery was swinging its massive cannon towards their trajectory. "Nova, calculate the jump window now. We need to clear the orbital Plat's gravity well." "Calculating. We need to clear the gravitational pull of the orbital platform. 5 more seconds of linear acceleration. Hold the ascent angle at 37 degrees. "We don't have 5 seconds. They're firing." Jax saw the target indicators turn red and a spike of energy on the threat sensor. He could feel the proximity alert screaming in his ears. He pushed the throttle past the red line, squeezing out every last ounce of thrust from the old engines, his breath catching in his throat as the first energy blasts streaked past their hull. "We're clear of the influence. Hyperdrive is engaged. Jump in 3, 2, 1. Jax slammed his hand down on the hyperdrive activation button. The stars outside the viewport fractured, turning into dazzling streaks of white and blue light. The cabin groaned under the immense stress, and for a terrifying second, Jax thought the whole ship would tear itself apart. Then, silence. The viewport was filled with the cool, alien brilliance of distant constellations. They were moving faster than light, in a space that defied time and physics. They were gone. Jax slumped back in his seat, utterly spent, staring blankly ahead. We actually made it." Nova's blue light flickered softly. "Of course we did, Jax. Your mechanical skills are only surpassed by your reluctant bravery. And frankly, those patrol ships were not authorized to fire on an asset flagged with a Priority 1 data breach." Jax smiled, a weary, genuine smile. He looked out at the stunning hyperspace, 160 light-years to Xylos, 160 light-years to Princessa Xena. He was a mechanic, a reluctant thief, and a man now utterly committed to the impossible. "So, Nova," Jax murmured, the engine humming a comforting lullaby. "What's the ETA on the black hole slingshot?" "Approximately 2 months, Jax," Nova replied, the blue light settling into a steady, warm glow. "Until then, try to rest. You just stole a ship and committed high treason. You've earned a nap. I'll keep watch." The Peregrine, small and insignificant against the canvas of the cosmos, streaked into the silent, star-shot darkness, carrying a mechanic, an AI, and a destiny 160 light-years away. Like the video and subscribe to the channel. You don't want to miss the next installment of Grand Theft Spaceship. Jax moved through the Peregrine's narrow corridors like a ghost, his steps absorbed by the old ship's padded flooring. The artificial gravity hummed faintly beneath the deck plates, steady, dependable, one of the few systems that hadn't failed him yet. Every morning he checked the same things: oxygen reclamation, water filtration, thermal regulators, gravity stabilizers. Every gauge read with intolerance. Every log showed green. It was almost disappointing, as though the universe had robbed him of an excuse to turn back. He ate in silence, slept in snatches. When he wasn't working, he floated, not weightless, but adrift in thought. Nova's voice would break the quiet sometimes, a disembodied presence in the recycled air. "Oxygen production nominal. Thermal variance 3% above baseline. You appear bored." "I prefer bored," Jax muttered, tightening a coolant valve. "Bored means alive." She chuckled, an oddly human sound for a legacy AI. "You define life as nothing going catastrophically wrong. Poetic." "Efficient," he countered. Days passed. The hum of the engines became a heartbeat, the same rhythm he fell asleep to and woke with. He adjusted to the silence until he began to hear things within it: the subtle creak of old metal, the deep sigh of structural fatigue, like the Peregrine was tired of holding itself together. Sometimes, in the long hours, he wondered if he'd made a mistake. He'd traded a life of dull predictability for a mission so improbable it bordered on myth. If the girl existed, if Xylos existed, he might find redemption. If not, he'd die alone in an unregistered ship, his name scrubbed from every Dominion record. And maybe that was the part that scared him most. The idea of disappearing quietly, with no one left to remember he'd ever tried. Nova broke his spiral. "Jax, may I ask something?" "Depends. Why did you say yes?" He glanced toward the ceiling, toward the soft pulse of her presence light. "Because I couldn't live with No, not after seeing her face." Nova didn't respond right away. The ship hummed between them, the sound of shared, uncomfortable understanding. The second week began like the first. Quiet systems checks, recycled air, and the patient hum of the Peregrine. Jax had settled into the rhythm of it, the strange peace that came with routine in the middle of nowhere. He had even started sleeping longer, trusting Nova to keep her endless vigil. But then the tone of her voice changed. "Jax," Nova said softly one morning, "I need you on the bridge." Her voice lacked its usual dry humor. Jax wiped his hands on a rag and climbed the short ladder into the cockpit. The display screens glowed in dim amber light, the way they did when something wasn't quite right. "Talk to me," he said. "I've detected a drive signature on long-range sensors. Dominion military configuration. 72 hours old when the signal reached us." Jax leaned over the console, studying the faint trace pulsing at the edge of the scope. "How far?" "Approximately 6.3 billion kilometers behind us. They're following our vector precisely." His stomach sank. "How the hell could they know our jump path?" "Statistically improbable," Nova said, "but not impossible. They could have extrapolated from the LCK access. The Dominion audits everything. A single packet of unauthorized data might have led them to us." Jax sat in the pilot's chair, staring out at the field of drifting stars. "They're faster than we are." "Yes," Nova confirmed, "by roughly 18% at sublight. If both ships maintain current trajectories, they will intercept us approximately 12 days before the slingshot." Silence filled the cabin again, thicker this time. Jax could almost hear the math grinding behind Nova's words. "What are our options?" "Limited," Nova said. "Hyperdrive is offline for cooldown. Another jump would collapse the field coils. That leaves only sublight modification." "You could reroute power from secondary systems to the main engines." He exhaled slowly. "How much faster?" 10%, maybe 12. Enough to delay them, not enough to escape. Jax rubbed his face, feeling the grime from long hours of work. "That's not enough." "I know." The AI didn't sound apologetic. She sounded aware. Over the next hours, Jax tore into the Peregrine's guts again. Heat exchangers, plasma feeds, magnetic couplings. He stripped everything he could spare. Gravity stabilizers went first. The ship felt lighter, looser, the artificial pull underfoot flickering like a dying heartbeat. He rerouted the heat regulators next, forcing the ship to run hotter. Sweat beaded on his skin, condensation misting across the cold metal of the console. "Temperature variance rising," Nova warned. "I know," Jax muttered, tightening the last coupling. "We need more speed." He engaged the new configuration. The ship lurched, groaning in protest. The numbers jumped, velocity up by 19%. The deck vibrated, a low animal growl that resonated through the hull. "Efficiency increase confirmed," Nova said. "However, sustained operation at this power level will reduce life support longevity by 30%. Jax slumped back in his chair. "We'll live, just not comfortably." "That's a generous assessment." 3 days passed under the new strain. The air grew heavier with heat and the faint metallic scent of overworked systems. Jax moved slower, his muscles aching, skin slick with sweat. He'd wake up dizzy, sometimes with a faint copper taste in his mouth. "You're showing early signs of heat stress," Nova said one evening. "I recommend rest." "Rest is for people who aren't about to be vaporized," Jax said, half smiling. Nova hesitated. "There is one more modification possible." Jax stopped mid-motion. "I'm listening." You could divert partial oxygen recirculation flow into the plasma boosters. It would increase thrust by another 3 to 5%. That's suicidal. Not immediately, she said carefully. It would lower breathable air efficiency by roughly 20%. You would experience hypoxia, nausea, disorientation, but you would survive. Jax leaned back, staring at the dull ceiling panels. You're telling me to make myself sick. I'm telling you that if we do not, the Dominion will reach us before the slingshot. He let out a quiet laugh. It wasn't amusement, it was resignation. You know, Nova, I've lost everything because of this ship. My home, my name, my life. If this is what it takes to make it count, then I'll do it. Jax. No, you said it yourself. The girl has 6 months. I can be sick for a few weeks. The AI didn't respond for a long moment. When she did, her voice was softer than he'd ever heard it. Then I'll monitor your vitals continuously, and if you die, I'll kill you. Jax smiled faintly despite himself. Fair trade. He reached for the control interface and began rerouting the oxygen flow. The Peregrine moaned as though it understood the cost. Outside, invisible in the black, the Dominion ship burned steadily closer. Its engines a silent, distant sun. The black hole system appeared on sensors like a heartbeat, faint pulses of gravitational distortion rippling through space. Even at this distance, the readings made Jax's stomach twist. Target confirmed, Nova said quietly. System designation, Helios Rift. One primary singularity, she continued. Mass 12 million solar units. Event horizon radius approximately 6 astronomical units. Jax stared at the holographic projection, an abyss rendered in cold light. Even the digital map seemed afraid to touch it. They had been running for weeks. The Dominion ship had closed to within striking distance twice, each time falling back just enough to remind them it was still there. Now, the chase was ending. They were almost at the rift. The Dominion cruiser will enter firing range in 36 minutes, Nova said. Her voice was unnervingly calm. Perfect, Jax muttered, strapping into the pilot's chair. Let's give them a front row seat. The cockpit lights dimmed as the Peregrine's engines adjusted to the gravitational shear. Course locked, Nova said. Slingshot trajectory calculated, though I should remind you that this model has not been tested. Of course it hasn't, Jax grumbled. Why would it be? We wouldn't want to make things easy. His hands hovered over the controls, knuckles white. He wasn't a pilot. He was a mechanic pretending to be one, and it terrified him. Nova, if this doesn't work, it will, she interrupted. Confidence from an algorithm, that's reassuring. Not confidence, she corrected. Probability, 62% survival rate. That's supposed to make me feel better. It was higher before you started talking. He shot her hologram a glare. The AI's faint blue shimmer flickered beside him, hands folded as if in prayer. Outside, the Helios Rift filled the viewport, an impossible sphere devouring starlight. It was both motionless and alive, tendrils of glowing plasma spiraling inward like veins of dying fire. The beauty of it made Jax's skin crawl. Default text engaging slingshot algorithm, Nova said. Her tone dropped, all humor stripped away. The Peregrine's hull began to vibrate, metal shrieking as the gravitational field seized it. Jax's stomach lurched as the artificial horizon twisted into madness. Manual stabilization required, Nova said. Of course it is. He gritted his teeth, gripping the yoke as warning lights flared red. I'm not a damn pilot, Nova. I'm going to get us both killed. You're the only one with hands, she replied. Do try not to waste them. The ship rolled violently. Instruments went haywire, screaming their confusion at the impossible physics around them. Through the distortion, a blip appeared on the scanner. Nova, what is that? Her tone faltered. It's a ship, she whispered, caught on the event horizon. Jax looked out the viewport and saw it, a freighter half swallowed by the black hole's edge, frozen mid-destruction. It shimmered like a mirage, time stretched into eternity. For an instant he swore he saw figures moving inside. Are they alive? He asked softly. Technically, Nova said. They're trapped between moments, alive and dead, forever. Jax's throat tightened. He couldn't look away. Focus, Jax! Nova's voice snapped him back. The controls fought him like a living thing. The Peregrine groaned under the pressure, every bolt crying out in protest. The stars ahead stretched into ribbons of light. Gravity warped around them, tearing space like paper. Now, Nova. Executing jump trajectory correction. Hold steady. The ship plunged into a halo of blue fire. Jax screamed against the crushing force, his vision fracturing into streaks of light and blackness. The Peregrine twisted around the singularity, engines howling in defiance. Then, silence. The black hole fell away behind them, shrinking into a distant, smoldering star. The stars ahead returned, bright and sharp, as the Peregrine leveled out. They were alive. Barely. Jax slumped in his chair, trembling. Status? Nova's voice came through softly, almost reverently. Trajectory confirmed. We're on course for Xylos. He exhaled, eyes wet. Outside, the cosmos burned quietly. Behind them, the rift swallowed the Dominion ship whole. As the ship curves around the singularity, Nova said quietly, they vanish into the event horizon's light. The viewport filled with white, then black. Please like, and more importantly, subscribe so you don't miss the next installment of The Peregrine. Thank you for watching. Jax came back one ache at a time. The first in his chest, a dull, rubbery pressure with every breath. The second in his head, a rotten pulse behind his eyes. The third wasn't pain, but taste. Metal and dust, like he'd been chewing on coins. You're awake, Nova said softly. Her voice filled the Peregrine without touching anything. Good. Don't sit up. He tried anyway and regretted it as the room tilted and snapped back. How long? He croaked. 21 hours since you diverted oxygen, she said. You slept 14, cursed existence twice, and called me a tyrant. Sounds like me, he rasped. You're recovering from mild hypoxia and heat stress, Nova added. The good news, you're not dying. The bad news, you'll feel like you are. He watched the ceiling grill breathe. Intake, outflow, intake. Dominion? No signs, she said. If they survived the slingshot, they didn't come out with us. He closed his eyes. So, we live. For now. Stay with me, Nova said. Water, small sips. A straw nudged his lip. He drank and tried not to taste the reclaimer tin. Tell me the list, he said. The morning checks. Tell me the list. Oxygen reclamation stable. Water filtration at capacity. Thermal regulators still in hot bias. Gravity stabilizers nominal. Radiation within limits. She paused. Engine status. Her blue presence light flickered. I don't have full communication with the drive core. He sat up too fast. What does that mean? I can read it, not command it, Nova said. Spool requests timeout. Diagnostics say healthy, but it's silent, like shouting through a wall that insists it isn't there. We cooked something, he muttered. He unlatched the harness and stood, legs rubbery. I'm going to see the core. Bring a respirator, Nova warned. The corridor felt smaller now. Ships did that when they were hurt. They pulled in. Heat hit him as he opened the aft bay hatch, varnish and metal. Drop temp 5 degrees, he said. Attempting. The hyperdrive loomed, a collar of coils around a dark cylinder. Speed never looked so heavy. At the access conduit, he heard the wrong music, stabilizers clinging too tight. He opened the panel. The Kerr-throat manifold collar, he breathed. The housing's warped, microfractures everywhere. That's why you can read, not command. I can't spool the core until we replace the housing, he said, and this one's done. Can we fix it? Nova asked. Not fix, replace. We don't have a factory. We have me, he said, and junk. He scavenged plating, coolant lines, a food panel brace, anything that could become a ring. Nova protested. He ignored her. There was something holy about cutting metal for the right reason. He burned, shaped, laminated, built. Hours blurred. When the new collar cooled, he wrapped it in radiator mesh and tensioned it until it hummed. Laser in your left, Nova guided. He aligned the boss, bolted it down. Try it, he said. Hello, core, Nova whispered, and the system chirped. I have command, she said, laughing. Jax slid to the deck. Don't spool yet, he murmured. Let the physics forgive us. You may not be a pilot, Nova said, but you're a hell of an engineer. He smiled at the cables overhead. Put that on a plaque. An hour later, the ship purred steady. Ready? Nova asked. Ready? They ran checks together. Oxygen, water, gravity. Spool core. The universe folded neatly. No scream, just motion. 17 days, Nova said. Then Xylos. On the 14th day, Xylos rolled out of the dark. Blue-green, scarred, alive. Not beautiful, not ugly. A survivor. A human could live there, Nova said. With help. Then let's help, Jax replied. Signal detected, Nova said. Vector 12 degrees north, archaic modulation, Aethelian dialect. His breath caught. Azina. There's damage, she warned. I'll try to speak to it. Static filled the cabin. Aethelian core. Protect the air. Confirm status of air, Nova called. Alive, awake, woke early. The voice fractured. Jax's pulse slowed to fear. Nova? I hear it, she said. She woke her early. The pod AI's words came like dying sparks. I kept her warm. I kept her warm. Location, Nova demanded. I see light. I sing so she sleeps. I have it, Nova said. Jax, strap in. We're going down. Xylos wasn't kind. Oxidized stone plains, thin air, winds dragging grit like knives. The Peregrine landed hard but whole. Signal stronger, Nova said. 40 meters east. Pod? Or wreckage? Or both? He suited up. The ramp hissed open. Wind met him like a whisper that wanted to bite. He crossed the ridge and found a bowl of melted glass. At its heart, an escape pod half buried in red dust. Nova? Is it Nova? I kept her warm. Jax closed his eyes. Good, Nova said. Open the hatch. He brushed dust from the panel, found the color ring, turned it. Blue, gold, black, white, and pressed. The door sighed. Inside, the air smelled like electricity and skin. A small shape lay wrapped in blankets that remembered why. Hair silver, face thin, chest rising, alive. Alive, Nova said, a word she'd never believed until now. I woke her early, the pod AI murmured. I'm sorry. I forgot the words, but I kept her warm. Jax touched the girl's wrist. Warm, human, here. Hello, Azina, he said. We've been a while. Outside, the wind softened. The Peregrine waited, ramped down like an oath. Nova, Jax said. Let's bring her home. Already setting the lift, Nova replied. Welcome to Xylos, Jax. Welcome to the end of impossible. He looked at the girl and the cracked pod. Not the end, he said. Just the price we came to pay. He lifted Azina into the air that didn't want her and carried her toward the ship. Above them, the pale sky held its breath. The Peregrine extended her ramp, patient and proud. Together, they climbed out of the bowl, carrying a life the Dominion had erased and a memory that refused to be deleted. They got her aboard quietly. The Peregrine's ramp sealed behind them, shutting out the thin whine of Xylos' wind. Inside, the air felt heavier, warmer, alive again. Jax carried Azina through the corridor, her head light against his shoulder. Too light for someone meant to save the world. Mid-cabin berth, Nova said. It's the most stable spot during ascent. He laid Azina gently on the bunk, wrapping the worn blankets around her like armor. Her breathing was shallow, but steady. Each rise of her chest a quiet defiance. Vitals? He asked. Faint but consistent, Nova replied. Core temperature rising toward baseline. Instability expected after early waking. That's a hell of a chart for someone asleep 50 years. You've seen worse, she said. Yeah, Jax murmured, but not like this. He stood there longer than he meant to, watching her breathe, listening to the hum of life support. Jax, Nova said softly, you need to rest. I'll sleep when we're off this rock. I was afraid you'd say that. The ship's engines began a low gathering whine. I've sealed the ramp and initialized lift, Nova said. Stormfront moving in. Then we're leaving just in time. The Peregrine shuddered, scattering red dust as it rose. The planet fell away, stone, sky, and finally silence. Jax dropped into the pilot's chair. "So," he said, "what's the plan?" "For once," Nova replied, "we have options. That's a first. We must go somewhere unmonitored, somewhere quiet." "You sound like you've already got a name." "I do," she said. "There's a man on Eidos Prime." Jax blinked. "That place is half myth." "That's precisely why it's ideal," Nova said. "Abandoned mining colony, written off after the collapse." "Your guy still alive?" Jax asked. "Joran Vale, former engineer, unofficial surgeon, officially dead 12 years. Jax chuckled weakly. "You collect IOUs now?" "Only the ones that matter. He can hide us. Heal her." Jax stared at the med readout. "We're betting her life on a ghost." Nova didn't deny it. "It's better than betting on the Dominion." The Peregrine cleared the atmosphere. Xylos shrank into a fading bruise below. "Course plotted," Nova said. 6 days at slip cruise." "Wake me when we get there," Jax murmured. "Of course." And for the first time since Helios Rift, the Peregrine felt like it was going somewhere with a plan. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe to the channel. It helps us more than you might think.